Guys, there are apparently massive rumors that NIO is potentially, that NIO is going to expand into Spain, Italy, and France. And not just with the NIO brand, but also with the Envo brand and the Firefly brand. So 3 brands in 3 countries. What is going on? And of course, we've all seen the news about the EU tariffs. The EU is becoming increasingly more hostile towards Chinese-made electric vehicles. Selling Chinese-made electric vehicles there is going to become even more expensive, even harder to sell. Yet NIO is still going ahead with expanding into these countries. It is counterintuitive, to say the least. All right, so why would they even do that? Well, today, I just went to one of the NIO houses and I overheard one of the sales reps talking to one of the customers, and he was proudly telling the customer that their cars are being sold not only in China, but also in Germany, Sweden, Netherlands, Norway, etc. So what you're seeing is that this is a very important marketing tool for them and a way for them to dispel the doubt that people have when buying a pure Chinese brand like NIO, right? Some people they just go for foreign brands, even though NIO is sort of like an international brand. People go for Tesla because it's a foreign brand. People go for BMW, Mercedes because they're foreign brands. So in that aspect, sales reps are utilizing this as a sales method. But you got to think about it. 10% value-added tax and then 21% tariff just makes the whole entire car kind of expensive there. And the cars there are already quite expensive. All right, they're not exactly affordable in Europe. And they don't sell a whole lot of cars. In Germany last month, I think they sold like 44 cars or something. Not a whole lot of cars. And one's got to think like, is this just wasting money? Is this just wasting money? Why would NIO want to expand there? At the same time, Xpeng, which is also going to be hit by these tariffs, they're considering building a factory there in Europe to avoid these tariffs. All right, creating jobs in Europe to avoid these tariffs. It kind of makes sense. Xpeng, they sell quite a few more vehicles there in Europe than NIO does. Interestingly, right? Very interesting. But it would really not make any sense for NIO to build a factory there when they're not really selling that many vehicles yet in Europe. It could make sense if they were in a lot more markets, which I guess this is what they're trying to do, right? Expand to the rest of Europe and then have swap stations there as well, new houses there as well, and have the whole entire European continent covered with sales stores, new houses, swap stations, etc., service centers. And that's going to be a more complete ecosystem. And I guess I can understand the point where if you have swap stations in every single country, then traveling within Europe would be just very, very convenient. And having more swap stations also really aids with the usability of a NIO, because right now, apparently in Europe, you can't do any sort of battery upgrade and downgrade, that kind of stuff. The kind of flexibility you get here in China. The reasoning is because of the lack of infrastructure, to say the least. So, of course, building more infrastructure, building more swap stations, and if they have those favorable policies like what Denmark has with negative electricity prices, incentivizing you to store electricity. One swap station earns 200,000 euros per year just from grid stabilization. Then it makes sense for NIO to place a whole lot of swap stations in Europe, in those other countries, if they have the same kind of rules, and just earn a lot of money from grid stabilization. And customers will come once they see that you got swap stations all over the country, all over Europe. Why not buy a NIO, right? There are some analysts saying that Chinese EV firms should just pull out of Europe because it's just unfavorable to sell cars there. So you don't really expect to earn much of a profit, okay? But then add on to that, expansion cost, expanding more, building more new houses and everything, that almost certainly guarantees dilution going forward. More expenses, building infrastructure for cars that may not even sell that well because they're unaffordable due to these tariffs. Now, NIO's CEO has said that Firefly, despite the tariffs, will still be able to sell well and still remain highly competitive even with the tariffs. But that will of course eat into margins, the tariffs, and we'll have to see. NIO's probably going to have to hike prices further in Europe going forward with these tariffs. And from my perspective, it just doesn't make sense. All right, it just doesn't make sense. It's sort of like that toxic relationship. You just keep on going back to it, and investing more into that toxic relationship is just not worth it. And what you're seeing with a lot of other automakers, for example, Li Auto, they're focusing solely on the Chinese market, which I think, NIO really should focus solely on the Chinese market. I don't agree with Li Auto's products. I think their products are subpar in terms of safety and stuff, in my opinion. But their management, all right, they're frugal spending, all right, they're not wasteful. And I guess their efficiency, okay, their management, I gotta say, all right, that's something that you gotta pay respect to, okay? The product, no. Management, okay. NIO really gotta expand more in China. In Germany, they sell 44 cars last month. In a smaller 4th and 5th tier city, they can do just about the same amount of deliveries, right? If they have infrastructure there, if they have the NIO houses there. Instead of building all these expensive NIO houses in countries where the cars are super expensive and not so much affordable for people, and people think they're too expensive there, why not invest that money and build NIO houses here in some of these smaller cities where you know that there will be great return of investment? This is the thing that I'm kind of worried about. NIO hasn't even gotten full success throughout China. They got success in Shanghai, Beijing. They're quite successful in these big cities, in Shenzhen, etc. But in smaller cities, 3rd, 4th tier cities, they are absolutely not selling more than BBA 100%. Okay, and they're not selling more than these ER/EV hybrids 100%. So why not focus on the domestic market first, where you know that you can see success, instead of leaping forward, expanding, overspending on these other countries, and perhaps potentially even running out of money? All right, that would be like a very bad scenario if you're expanding into all those countries. And we know UAE is coming as well, Brazil's coming as well. They're expanding into so many different countries. It's just, once again, the biggest auto market is still China, right? China and the United States. United States is kind of hard with 100% tariff, but I guess you should focus on China first. See absolute success in China, and then work on those other areas, especially when they have tariffs that are preventing you from being successful there. They should just pull the plug, in my personal opinion. Stop expansion in Europe, work with what you already have, and then see how things go. And then also just focus the efforts here domestically in China, where you're going to be able to sell more cars. But that's just my opinion. Of course, I don't have any influence on what NIO does or what NIO doesn't do. It's just my opinion. At the end of the day, it looks like they're going to be pushing forward with those expansion plans. Hopefully they can be frugal and save some money and not dilute the hell out of shareholders. But dilution is pretty much guaranteed going forward. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.